Right, watch this. This is where we take control of the situation.
Mr. Brown, you testified that you were listening to music at the time of the shooting.
That's right.
And isn't Jay-Z music?
Yes.
And doesn't he have the lyrics?
Good day everyone. Today we are going to be doing a recoil repair on a 2002 Ski-Doo Tundra 250R. You have to start with taking the 4 bolts out for your oil pump there. And they are just regular starter head screwdriver, I believe. Next we are just going to remove the clip that is holding in your oil line. It is a 10 mil socket or wrench. Next we're going to remove the 5 main bolts for the recoil cover. They are a size 30 6-point star, and there's 2 of them on the bottom there. They're hard to get to, and you'll see how we got to get in there. And make sure you push hard on these tubes. You're not going to want to strip them out either. As you can see here, we got our first 3 bolts out. Next we're going to put our head onto a tiny ratchet or whatever you find is easiest to reach into tight spots, and we'll show you how you get these last 2 out. Now that you have your bolts removed, you're going to want to remove your pull start handle and begin taking off your cover. Now be careful when you do this. You don't want to drop and lose your oil pump gear. Now on some other machines it'll be located in a different spot, so you won't have to worry about it, but with a lot of Ski-Doos they put it right there for some reason. Kind of a pain in the ass, but it will. And now that I have it off, I'm just going to give it a couple wiggles and shakes to try to figure out what the issue is. Here I can feel the spring is still grabbing a little bit, so I know it's not broken, but it's likely just popped off the plastic. And then we're going to start removing things and check it out. This part is pretty easy. You're just going to want to grab a flathead screwdriver and pull this one pin off the top, squeeze your spring, remove that, and pull the bottom pin off the bottom. So it might be a little tight and have to give it a couple wiggles, but that's alright. You're not going to damage anything. Now this is where it gets pretty tricky. Once you have all that stuff removed, you're gonna have to be very careful removing your actual pull cord and case itself, because if that little spring pops off, it'll just unwind and cause a big mayhem. I do show an example of it in this video for you, but if you can avoid it, I'll also show you how to remove it properly. Now, if this does end up happening to you, it's going to kind of suck, but what you're going to have to do is make sure it's not all twisted. Grab it with your hands, tighten it up as best as you can, double check to make sure it's going to be tight enough to fit back inside the cover, and then get a buddy to come over with some vice grips and pinch it closed for you and pop it back down into place. As you can see, I was lucky enough that the spring didn't come apart the first time I took the case off, and now I can see the issue is the spring is just not grabbing into the proper spot. So I'm going to start by spreading it open a little bit more and seeing if we can get it to grab. As you can see, to get it back on, you just sort of wiggle it in place, but if you're looking for a little trick, tie some fishing line around it and you can pull the spring and sort of maneuver it while you're trying to get your case back on, and sometimes it helps get it all together. You can see now I just got the case down, and now I'm going to twist it up and double check to make sure it's working, but unfortunately it still wasn't springing back all the way properly, so I knew there was more issues to be had and had to take it apart again and try to fix it up more. And it just goes to show you that even if your spring is grabbing doesn't necessarily mean it works. Here, when I let go of it, it should want to take that rope all the way back inside, but it stops a few inches short, and that's how I know there's still issues. Now, if your spring doesn't get all messed up and you take your case off nice, what you're going to want to do is grab a pair of vice grips. There should be a little slot to slide the tip in, clamp it around your spring, and remove it to fix any issues. And what I had to do in the case of this machine was get a torch and heat it up to bend it around a little bit more so it fit on the inside plastic piece a little bit better. And I also had to clip the little round hook a bit shorter so it grabbed more proper. As you can see in this photo, it hugs it around nicely now and slides in pretty snug. Now that you have your spring back in the case, grab your cover and your fishing line, get everything set up, and start wiggling around until you feel it pop on. Once it's on, you can see now that it's grabbing a lot better, and you're going to want to spin it backwards a couple extra times past your when the end of the rope comes in, just to tighten it up. Feed your rope back through, and if it wants to spring back in all the way, put a pair of vice grips on the end of your rope and reinstall everything. Here's going to be a little bit tricky too, because you're going to want to make sure the nipple that your spring sits on is in the grooves on the red plastic piece that are directly back from the point. This can get skipped around and slid on to the track on the other side, so if it does, just make sure it's back in its original position, and you're good to go. Okay, now that we have our cover back on, we're going to want to get our oil pump gear and slide that back into place. It's shaped with one flat side, so it should only slide in one way. Put your oil pump back on, make sure it slides into the gear, and see if your slide will fire up.